And joining us on the line, Hendrik Makaneta, the Director for Media and Alumni Affairs and Higher Education Transformation Network. And in studio, we have Comrade Sizwe Tsiane, COSA's National Working Committee. He is he's the political head for the Working Committee in COSAS. Good evening to you and thanks so much for joining us. Why I say Comrade Sizwe Tsiane? Because they got your name on the guest list as such, not necessarily that it's your first name. But thanks for joining us. Developments so far from the NEC Lekgotla, very promising, but of course it depends on the implementation.
Thank you for having us. I think it is important that we first note that the ANC has been gradually improving its implementation on free education. And on that note, it is very important to remember that COSAS as an organization, since its formation, it has been speaking about free, fair, compulsory, dynamic education in our lifetime. And already in basic education, we have seen public schools, students having access to public schools and even finishing matric without paying any fees. And we have said in that same spirit that we want to see the realization of the same policies in free education, but we need to realize the fact that the voice, the genuine voice of people who cannot afford education is in the ground, is in rural areas, is in townships. In fact, 50% of learners who come from poor backgrounds, who come from townships, do not even have access to institutions of higher learning. Now, we believe as the Congress of South African Students, that is where we need to emphasize the issue of free education. We acknowledge the leadership of President Jacob Zuma and the ANC collective in the implementation and the realization of free education. And we say that more still needs to be done. Infrastructure in schools needs to be improved. We need to speak about beneficiaries of social grants who do not even have money to apply in institutions of higher learning. That is why we have been saying to the African National Congress that it is important to prioritize the black child who cannot even afford to buy school shoes to travel more than 10 kilometers to and from
just
school.
Hold that thought. Thabo Mutle is the ANC Youth League NEC member. Thabo, thanks so much for your time. And as Sizwe Tsiane says here, it really conjures memories of one's upbringing, and it's a story that is not unique. It's universal with many black people who struggle to fend for themselves, let alone access higher learning, you know, not only having to hold two jobs, etc. And this is a step closer, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's free for all. There is a responsibility on young people to have an appetite and to have that aptitude to want to have a better life for themselves.
Thanks, indeed.
My point is that, yes, we're encouraging for free higher learning or access to quality education, but young people need to position themselves and know that there is a competition for scarce resources. It's not just getting an RDP house by virtue of turning 18 or whatever the criteria is.
Yes, Cindy. Firstly, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Carry on.
Yes. Firstly, we appreciate the move by the African National Congress, but that does not mean that it's a silver platter for young people. It has been said, I think, it requires also from the side of young people who will be given this opportunity to take it with both hands and ensure that they perform through that particular opportunity, so that we produce many young qualified people who will participate in the economy. But equally, what does it mean to the African National Congress government? It means that you don't open up on the other side whilst you don't have a plan to ensure that once these young people are through, are done with that process, graduated, you ensure that you create jobs for them. Because it will be a crisis if you open up on the other side and you don't do anything on the other side to ensure that these graduates, immediately when they graduate, they've got access to jobs at the same time. Because I can tell you, the ANC acknowledges that it needs to create or resolve the unemployment that is confronting young people in general, in particular graduate unemployment, which is a serious challenge to our government.
Yeah, I understand about the extended socio-economic problems, but just looking at free and decolonized education, as we see, we've seen with the hashtag Fees Must Fall campaign, whether that is feasible. We see these incremental interventions that the ANC has had, NFSAS, we had Kagiso Trust before then, and various other forms of financing. Now converting loans into grants, what then does that mean for the next cohort of learners that want to access financing? Just hold the thought, Thabo. Sizwe will answer that.
Look, we think that it can't be correct that it is only the ANC-led government that is being given and being pressured with the responsibility to deliver on such a hot fundamental right of young people to enter into institutions of higher learning. We feel that private sector must also take responsibility and assist learners who are, in fact, we are saying that private sector must assist us in building more universities. We've seen under the leadership of the ANC 2 universities being built. We've seen under the leadership of the ANC again almost every week through the RCD program, schools being continuously being built. But we are saying that we need more intervention from people who are milking the fiscus of the country and are not giving it back. The future of any country is through its education.
Yeah, but how do you do that when you know, industry or business would be concerned about the junk status, or where we find ourselves saying that, you know, there are constraints as it is now in not only operations but in the return on the investment?
It doesn't concern us when we don't even have money to buy bread. We need to focus on how we are going to build the future of this country, and that the only way to do that is through education. And we are saying we need to intensify efforts to make sure that we build more schools, we make sure that we have infrastructure, and we build more laboratories. In fact, that the decolonized education that everybody is speaking about, we need to unpack it and say what kind of an education will contribute in positively bringing in young people to contribute in the economy of the country. And we are saying private business needs to be seen visibly so in assisting young people to access. That's why in my first statement I reiterated and emphasized the issue of access. Young people don't have access to institutions of higher learning. Young people are employed in ShopRite. Young people are employed in retail markets, and their voice is not even finding resonance. That's why we are saying that if we're going to speak about free education, we need to go back to those beneficiaries of social grants in these township schools, in these rural areas, and speak to those learners there who don't even know how to apply online even to start.
But it's not all doom and gloom, because even in those distressed communities, there are pockets of excellence where, you know, young people will thrive even in the most adversarial environments, you know, but you have to have the appetite, you have to have, you know, the propensity to want something, you know, dream and not just wait for handouts.
Look, poverty is the best, what did you just call it? Motivation that any person would need. Every young person in this country wants to succeed in their lives. And we are saying we need to have, they have lost hope, most of them. That is why you find that there are even dropouts who go and end up smoking daga and nyaupe on the streets there. We are saying we need to see more intervention from everybody, because this is a social issue. It is not only the responsibility of the ANC-led government to deliver on free education, and we need to challenge it accordingly and say there are people who are milking the fiscuses of the country that are not visibly contributing to the future of the country, and they need to be seen doing likewise. And we believe in that spirit we are going to be able to make sure that we have free institutions. We are saying that we must have free colleges. We need to have former disadvantaged universities being declared free, and those that are making money out of the future of the country through education must be left to do that, and we access education because we want to learn.
Okay, and joining us in studio, Hendrik Makaneta,
yes.
Director for Media and Alumni Affairs, Higher Education Transformation Network. Good evening to you, and thanks for joining us. Is this a deferred dream, or is it something that can be attained within a reasonable time frame?
Well, I think it will depend on the commitment of both, government as well as the private sector. But our concern is the threshold that the ANC has put in place. We believe that 150,000 rands, those families which are earning 150,000 rands per annum, that is very little. We are concerned about the those that are between 150,000 as well as 600,000, because the majority of those cannot afford the exorbitant fees that are charged by the terrain of higher education. So we believe that the ruling party can do more in ensuring that they too are accommodated, because the fact that they are going to receive loans, that is not enough. It's what has been happening all along. And, that is the major concern that we have.
But how do we work with the means that we have? I mean, I was just citing examples that you have brilliant educators who, against all odds, will inspire you. I'll name a few from Arlapak Sekerbos Rant in Niger, where I went to junior high, that despite your circumstances, there is that one person that sees your talent and will encourage you to be able to look beyond your limitations. So to use what we already have and not during protests burn down infrastructure, etc. So I'm sure as young people, those are things that also regress from the progress that you've made.
We've always condemned the destruction of property, because we think it's a step back to progress. We believe that it cannot be that we are marching for free education, but we are the ones who are banning institutions that are already there. We have students who are passing excellently, who are studying under trees in villages, and they are not bringing the excuse of saying no, free education is expensive. You can't march for electricity and burn down a danger post. It doesn't make sense. That's why we are saying it is because the voice is not genuine. It is because the real voice of students who do not afford education is not finding resonance. And we feel that the ANC-led government, if it's going to challenge it correctly, it needs to go to the ground, it needs to go to villages, it needs to go to townships and capacitate, improve and declare colleges and formally disadvantaged universities free, so that we are able to structure it correctly and have a formula, a working formula, so that I know that when I want to access free education, I go to Tshwane University of Technology. I know that when I want free education, I go to Tshwane South College. That is what we are saying as the Congress of South African Students. But in the spirit, we are saying gradually it is we are very appreciative of the fact that there is improvement. We are very appreciative of the fact that there is something that we are seeing happening every day by the ANC-led government, and we are saying together we have to do more.
Okay, let's look at best case studies internationally on how similar economies achieved a free higher education, even in the rest of Africa. Hendrik.
Yeah, well, obviously it depends. For example, in the country here, we've got quite a number of public institutions, and in other, if you look at the rest of the world, there are others where you find that private institutions are also taking a lead, and they put less burden to the state. And in our case, we've got 26 universities in the country, and, as well as a number of TVET colleges. So that poses a very serious challenge in as far as the fiscus is concerned. That is why we still want to call upon the private sector to ensure that they also come on board in order to make sure that we resolve this crisis of underfunding. Because we still believe that government alone will not be able to fully resolve the challenge of fees within our institutions of higher learning.
Because the reality is that a grant or a loan will not cover your basic needs beyond just getting a student card, registering, having access to the facilities. You also have accommodation, the proximity that you are to your lectures, having food, for example. So how much is government going to then carry for deserving students? And I'm sure there's many out there.
Look, we continue to say that let us take it one step at a time. Let us have a realistic approach to the implementation of free education. And our contribution to this is that we need to address the fundamental issues at the least. The primary of our issues that we must be addressing is access. That students who are deserving as well, who are from really disadvantaged backgrounds, a child who has been receiving support for 18 years in school through a grant of the government, and we're saying that child can't be expected now in 19 years just after you become legal to drink alcohol. You are expected to go and apply. You are expected to be independent. You are expected to clothe yourself, because even in universities there are social ills there that students are still subjected to, and we need to address that simultaneously as we're addressing the implementation of free education and its implementation.
All right, Mr. Mutle, Thabo, just how this poverty test, in terms of who qualifies, as Sizwe was saying here, there are more deserving students based on their circumstances that may not have the ability to even take this opportunity because of their limitations. Hi, Thabo. Hello. All right, we lost Thabo there. Maybe Hendrik, you can help us with that. In the whole poverty test, or the criteria as to who qualifies, especially with the limited bracket of 150 to 600,000 rand per annum.
Yeah, look, we think that it is the right step in the right direction. At least there is commitment from the ruling party to say something needs to be done. That should be the starting point. And we really welcome the announcement by the ANC from the Alikotla, the statement that came. But we think that, we need to sit down and really find ways and means of ensuring that we also accommodate. Because if you look at 150,000 rands, that comes down to 12,500 rands per month. Mm-hmm. And, yes, it's a relief for those who are earning 12,500 and less. But somebody who's earning 13,000 rands or even 18,000 rands, the exorbitant fees that are charged by universities, they may not be able to afford. So I'm saying that perhaps government will need to call a broader forum, which includes a wide range of formations throughout the country, the private sector included, labor as well, business, to make sure that really we find ways and means of ensuring that we prioritize primarily those students who come from poor backgrounds, rural communities, and so on and so forth.
All right, let's invite Dr. Ramodungwana Tabane. He's an educational expert. Dr. Tabane, good evening to you, and thanks so much for joining us. We're just asking, in terms of a collaborative effort between government-private partnerships, whether business is, has the intention really to, as part of the CSI program, to support poor students who cannot access higher learning institutions or education.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. Yeah, that's a difficult one, a bit of a challenge, because we must remember that what is private and what is it there for, and one of the reason that is there, it is indeed to make profit. However, not all private are like that, and if indeed we can have a situation where private and public institutions can work together to support the poor students so that we can increase the workforce of our country, that will be excellent.
Yeah, and then converting grants into loans, how do you sustain the program to afford other qualifying students come the next year?
Yeah, you see, because not everyone actually will be able to do that. Because at the end of the day, one should have the return into the investment that they have done. And then if now you have a situation where now students now need to go back and pay back the money, and what we talk about in terms of the black tax and all that can be a bit of a challenge.
All right, but I mean, do you think this is a good move in giving poor students a lifeline, and very critically so, in light of the Fees Must Fall campaign?
It is a right it is a what do you call it? A step in the correct direction. However, it's not the end, because our backlog in terms of getting students into universities and making sure that they don't fall out or drop out, it's still huge. And even though this move is welcomed, like the previous caller has said, there still needs to be far more consultations as well to maintain it. Because that's my main problem, the maintaining of this.
All right, Dr. Tabane, much appreciated. Thanks indeed. I do apologize. We had difficulties in connecting with you earlier on. But just wrapping up in studio, Mr. Tsiane, especially holding students to account, because, you know, if you don't work for something, you're likely to abuse it. So to make sure that there's none that falls through the cracks, that they complete their qualifications and contribute to society.
Look, that is why we have been saying as the Congress of South African Students that a government needs to go and engage learners in pre-tertiary institutions, raise awareness as to how are they going to access education, as to how the attainment of free education came about, so that they become aware. There is nothing.
But in the technology age that we have, where there's access, you know, to all sorts of social media, do you want to tell me that there is still areas where young people are not connected in a way to plug into this opportunity?
Look, let me tell you, it is a reality. Every day when I come back from school, I see learners in groups standing by Wi-Fi spots, trying to connect to the internet. And that is another issue that we are not addressing, the broadband issue. And we are saying that we need to make sure that students are aware, students have information, students know what is at stake here. And as we figure out the deserving part, excluding the issue of the background, we need to also make sure that we have students that are going to, we take them in a process from pre-tertiary institution to higher learning. In that spirit, we know that students who understand where, that is why I'm saying, let me make an example personal. I'm a beneficiary of an RDP. I will always appreciate the fact that other young people like myself are still in shacks. And that is why we are saying that students are not appreciative and don't take this serious because they don't understand.
Yeah, just very briefly, Hendrik, in terms of organizations that do assist students if they don't necessarily qualify for a government grant that you can quickly cite.
Well, of course, there are edu loans as well. You know, most of them are loans. I think they've changed their name now. And, you know, they do assist from time to time students who don't necessarily qualify.
All right, we'll have those details on our website as well. I'm afraid we're out of time. Thanks indeed for joining us. And you at home, your viewership is much appreciated. We'll take a quick ad break. We'll see you shortly.